Unfortunately, the Cup race at Daytona has been postponed to tomorrow morning. Just an hour, it's scheduled to be just an hour after the F1 race, so that'll be great if those both start on time. That's sarcastic. I doubt the Daytona race will start on time. It's supposed to rain all day tomorrow, too. Anyways, we have another championship case to cover today. Wasn't able to do it yesterday. Figured I would do it today in this kind of delayed period of the race. So we're going to talk about Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin has 2 wins on the season. First one coming at Richmond, the second one coming at Charlotte in the Coca-Cola 600. His season consists of 5 top 5s, 7 top 10s, 3 stage wins, and 371 laps led. It's been a bit of a different season for Denny Hamlin. It took him till that Richmond win, I think, to get his first top 10 on the season. It was a very difficult start to the season. DNFs, and even when they were running well, something went wrong, a penalty, late race restart, whatever it was, they just had bad luck very early on in the season. Then later in the season, they started to pick it up a bit more, got a couple of wins, more top 5s, running up front more. And even then, they had some bad luck. You look at Michigan, they had the best race car, but a late pit road penalty pushed them back a bit. They end up finishing 3rd or 4th or something like that, when they had probably the best car that should have won, but because they shot themselves in the foot, it ended up hurting them and costing them the win. And then, of course, we have to talk about it, Pocono. Denny Hamlin, he won the race. He crossed the line first, disqualified for breaking a rule about some tape on the front of the car. So, yeah, they've had a very up and down year. They've shown a lot of speed at times, had the best cars, and then they've shot themselves in the foot. They've had the best car, been there at the end, won the race. So, it's been a very up and down season for Denny Hamlin. Of course, the running joke is that he has never won a championship. He's arguably the greatest to win to not win a championship in NASCAR Cup Series history, but this year he is once again hoping to break that trend. So we've talked about his season so far. Let's look at his championship case. What could make him the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series champion? First of all, as I say with everyone else, playoff points. He has to get those playoff points. He currently sits with 13 playoff points. He is 7th on the playoff grid, I think, 7th or 8th. I don't think he can get into the top 10 in points, so he can't get any bonus playoff points from that. He can, however, get more playoff points through a win, obviously, a stage win, and he's a really good super speedway racer, so this week at Daytona or tomorrow at Daytona or whenever we race at Daytona is a very good possibility. But yeah, so let's assume we're going into the playoffs in the current situation with 13 playoff points. First round, I'm not concerned about. Those are really good tracks for Denny Hamlin. Of course, you got Darlington, a track he's won at a few times. You've also got Kansas, a place that he's won at a couple of times. In the spring, he had a top 5 car. Toyota was really good in that race. Kurt Busch won the race. Bubba Wallace had top 5 speed. The JGR cars all had top 5 speed, but of course, there's only 5 spots in the top 5. So Hamlin was one of those guys in the top 5. I expect them to run really well there again. They're really good there. And then Bristol is another track Denny Hamlin has won multiple times at. So I expect Hamlin to get through this first round. Assuming he doesn't have any problems, doesn't get in an early wreck at Darlington or something, or digs himself into a hole, he should be fine. He could theoretically run top 5 and even win a couple of these races. Second round is Texas, Talladega, and the Charlotte Roval. Hamlin once again has a good history at Texas. He has a few wins at Texas before the repave and even after the repave. He won there in 2019, so he's had his good share of success at Texas. As for Talladega, as I just said, Denny Hamlin is one of the best super speedway racers in the NASCAR Cup Series, so I would expect him to be contending for the lead or for the win late, avoid all the chaos, hopefully he doesn't have to worry about stage points and be in contention there at the end for the win, kind of like what he did in 2020. But Talladega is still unpredictable. It is still chaotic. Anything could happen. So it's not a guarantee he'll do good in this race just because it is an unpredictable super speedway, but he will be one of the favorites. He will be one of the best in the playoffs regardless of who gets through to the second round. So he would have to be one of the favorites in that race to not only, potentially win, but to do very well as well. Charlotte Roval, he's been a decent road course racer, but this is where my concern is for him and all the other Toyota drivers. Toyota has completely missed it on the road courses this year. Their best finish on a road course, I honestly think, might have been Christopher Bell at Watkins Glen with an 8th place finish. Other than that, it's been terrible this year. They've been in the 20s. They've been maybe in the top 19, top 20 at best, but they just have not had any competitive speed whatsoever. They've never competed for a win this year at road courses. And Martin Truex Jr., who's arguably one of the best road course racers in the Cup Series, he might not have a top 10 at the road course this year, which is just shocking. So Martin Truex Jr., Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, whoever it may be, they usually get at road courses, but this year they're not, and it's not necessarily their fault. Toyota's just been bad. So Denny Hamlin, I think he has to do really good in those first two races because he does not have the playoff point gap that Chase Elliott has, that even a guy like Joey Logano, Kyle Larson might have going into this race. And if he gets in trouble at Talladega and it comes down to a must-win or he has to make up points, he may be in some trouble just because of how bad Toyota has been on the road courses. So that is a big trouble spot for me, the Roval, just because of how bad they have been on road courses this year. So it's not a must-win at Texas or Talladega, but they cannot have any problems. If they have any problems whatsoever, I think that could be the end of Denny Hamlin's championship hopes. So I think he's going to have to run maybe top 5 at Texas, maybe top 5, 10 Talladega, just survive Talladega. Hope that other people get involved in crashes and put him below the cutoff line. But yeah, I mean, Texas, I think he finished second in the All-Star race. Toyota has looked really good at the intermediate, so I expect him to run well there. Talladega is still a toss-up, but he is one of the best super speedway racers, and then the Roval, it's a question mark. So, if he can run top 5 at Texas, contend for the win, survive Talladega, he should be good for the Roval, but hopefully it doesn't come to that. As for the round of 8, this is a pretty good round for Denny Hamlin. Vegas and Homestead are both intermediate tracks. As I just said, Toyota has been really good on those intermediate tracks. Vegas in the spring, I think Hamlin led a good chunk of laps before something went wrong with the gearbox or something. Something broke down when he was in the top 5, so they were showing a lot of speed. Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. were fighting for the win before a late race caution. Christopher Bell got the pole, so Joe Gibbs Racing looked very strong in the spring at Las Vegas, and I expect them to be strong once again at Vegas. So I think Denny Hamlin will be competing for the win. I think he's the defending winner of that race, in fact. So, I would expect him to run really well at Las Vegas to be up front competing for the win. Same thing for Homestead Miami. He won there 2 years ago, maybe. He's got a few wins there, so I expect him in Toyota to once again be really good at these intermediate tracks, but you are going to have other competitors, Kyle Larson, Tyler Reddick, that are really good at this track as well. So it's not going to be a walk in the park, but it should be a top 5, top 10 at worst for Denny Hamlin. So I expect him to do really good at these first 2 tracks, and then the last track in that round of 8 is Martinsville. Hamlin has 5 or 6 wins there. He's always been good at Martinsville. I don't know why, but something about that track just suits his style. And so I think this is a very good round for Denny Hamlin. I could honestly see him run top 5 in any of these races. Martinsville, I don't think Toyota did great there in spring, but I'm sure they have some type of improvements, and they haven't been bad at all short tracks. You look at Richmond, Hamlin won. You look at New Hampshire, Truex led a ton of laps there. So, and Bell won, obviously. So I expect Toyota to be better there than they were in the spring. In those first 2 races, honestly, Denny Hamlin could potentially win. So I think that's a very possible scenario that he wins one of those races or does well enough that he could be in the Final 4 on points. So, he doesn't have that playoff buffer, the playoff point buffer that a Chase Elliott might have. But if he can do well enough in those first 2 races, he could potentially be in. But if he needs to get more playoff points, as I said. As for that race at Phoenix, it's a toss-up. Phoenix is a toss-up. Just because of this format, it's so weird. Anything could happen. But Hamlin has made the last couple of championship 4s that have been at Phoenix. He finished... What did he finish last year? I think he was 3rd, maybe 4th. 2020, I think he was 3rd or 4th. So he's done good at Phoenix. He's won there a couple times before. But, of course, you don't know. They've only been there once with the next-gen car. There's a lot of question marks, and Denny Hamlin, he finished, 13th? It says here 13th in the spring at Phoenix, so it's going to be tough. They weren't the fastest manufacturer. We saw Ford lead a ton of laps in that race with Blaney and Briscoe, but yeah, that's the Denny Hamlin championship case. So to sum this up, playoff points are of the most importance. First round, he should be fine. Second round, if they can get enough points in those first 2 races, he should be fine. But if it comes down to it, the Roval could be a tricky spot for Denny Hamlin or any of the Toyota drivers just because of how bad they've done on the road courses this year. And then, the third round, he's actually going to be one of the favorites, I would say, in those first 2 races. I expect him to do really well there, to run top 5, compete for the win. And, he might not even have to worry about Martinsville much if he's in a good point situation or, of course, if he wins. And then as for Phoenix, who knows? They may have to pick up the pace a little bit there just because they were a little bit off some of the other teams, but, they're going to be in contention for it, so that's good enough there, and who knows what could happen at Phoenix. But that's the Denny Hamlin championship case. I did not. Once again, I'm terrible at checking who the next one's going to be, but it says here Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick will be the next championship case, or Ryan Blaney, depending on what happens in the race tomorrow, and if it doesn't happen tomorrow, Monday. But yeah, I plan on being up for both the F1 and NASCAR race tomorrow. F1 race probably is happening, I think. NASCAR race, it's supposed to rain all day, so I don't know. NASCAR race could be happening, it's supposed to rain every day at Daytona this week, so I really don't know when the NASCAR race is happening, but F1 for sure in the morning. If there's no NASCAR race tomorrow, I'll make another championship case video, and I'll talk to you whenever these races actually happen.